Today on the Rise of the Challenge podcast.
Personally, it actually gave me the biggest burnout I've ever had in my life. And I just had no motivation. And I am not that person. I hope the energy is coming across here in this interview. Like, wow, that guy, does he even sleep? And it's like, there was a whole year and then COVID hit too. So it was like this perfect storm of just like doom and gloom outside, and at the same time, I was just completely burnt out from finishing up the development and working so much.
Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Joining today, he's a serial entrepreneur, architect, builder, pro fisherman. It's Lance Cayko. How are you doing today, Lance?
Alex, I'm doing well. Thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. I appreciate that. You're, I think, the third or fourth person in the entire world that's done that. Bravo.
Thank you. We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what you like doing growing up.
Sure. I'm from Northwest North Dakota. I grew up in a very tiny town. It was a town of a population of only 500 people, which then meant I went to a K through 12 school. Everybody went to one school, classes of like 20. And growing up, when you grow up in that rural of an area, I mean, your choices of what you can do really amount to the outdoors, which is good and bad. I mean, you don't really have a lot of choices urban wise. So I grew up halfway between on one side of the family that we were cattle ranchers, and then the other side of the family we had a sugar beet and a durum farm. And my first job was actually on the sugar beet and durum farm, which is basically wheat. And I tried irrigating with my dad one summer when I was 13 and lasted about a week, not because I'm a wuss, but because a couple reasons. I didn't get along with my dad too well at that point in my life. And it just wasn't kind of my line of work. And he said, well, you got to do something. And I said, yeah, you're 100% right. We were lower middle class. Like, we were kind of expected to earn the extra cash if we wanted, Jordans or stuff like that on our feet. And so I called up his best friend, Bruce. Bruce was a general contractor. And I asked him if he had anything I could do. And he said, sure, you could be my gopher. And I said, great. And we said, what's that? And he said, you can go for this, you can go for that. When you're done going for the things, then you can get up on the roof with us, and we're doing 80 roofs this summer. We're going to be up at the crack of dawn. We're going to have them torn off by 10 a.m., put back on by 2 or 3 p.m., and then we're done for the day. It's very hard work. We'll pay $7.25 an hour, and I love the work more than anything in my life. I mean, it just felt like home to me. I love the camaraderie. I loved seeing what we did every day and accomplishments. And of course, there was the money part of it too. And Bruce became a very serious mentor in my life. And I don't know if he intended it that way, but that's how it started out. And there was something that really he said to me that sort of changed my life forever in terms of being an entrepreneur. And he said, about halfway through the summer, he said, I'm paying you $7.25 an hour, Lance. What do you think I'm charging the clients for your labor? $7.25 an hour. And he laughed. And I was kind of embarrassed. And he said, well, that's not how it works. I charge per hour, for your labor 3 to 4 times what I'm paying you. And I go, oh, why do you do that? Well, I have to procure the work. There's a risk of not having work, and I have to pay all the insurance. And he said, and then I have to pay you, and everything that's left over after that, that's called profit. And that's the lifeblood that keeps my company going. And after I understood that and the multiplication factor, I thought, first and foremost, I want to be a general contractor like Bruce, because Bruce doesn't worry about money. And it's not so much that he was rich or anything. It's just he was absolved of the anxiety and the fear of money and not having it. And that's why one of my favorite quotes is by actually Kanye West, who says, having money isn't everything, not having it is. So that's kind of a quick background of who I am and how I started my entrepreneurial journey.
Did you ever feel danger at all with getting on the roofs and stuff, or was that kind of thrilling for you?
Thrilling. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because I'm part Native American, and I don't know how much you know about the Native Americans who built the skyscrapers out east, the very first ones. They were the ones that were walking the skyscrapers and the red iron and all of that. And so I think there's a lot of just that sort of nurture or nature part that comes out in me. And I've never really been afraid of heights. My business partner is absolutely terrified of heights. I didn't realize that until we actually got one of our first projects, and he was only walking on top of like a foundation wall, and he couldn't do it. And I was like, "Yeah, are you serious?" I was like, "It's 8 feet, man. You can jump down and you'll be fine." So for me, I love the thrill, and it just feels good. I have fallen off the roof once, but I by the grace of God, I wasn't hurt. So
The only time I've ever been on my roof of my house is my house was hit by a tornado and I was helping like taking the shingles off. And when my mom found out that I was doing that, she kind of freaked out. But I go, the ladder's right there, the trampoline's on the other side. I just jump off onto the trampoline. We're good.
yeah, right. That's hilarious.
You talked about growing Native American. What does that culture mean to you growing up during that time?
It's the culture as it exists where I grew up was one of, I would say, despair and a spiral. So it actually isn't mostly a good place to be at, because people get caught up in just being dependent on all the social welfare that comes from the government. And, I'm a product of that. We grew up in kind of socialized housing that was subsidized, definitely socialized medicine and all of that, but they just get stuck in a rut. And it's kind of like I was giving an interview on my podcast earlier today, where it's like you are the sum of the parts you hang around with, right? So if you're brought, it's really hard to escape those kind of environments unless somebody kind of pulls back the veil and you experience people who are above you in terms of just social stature, can-do attitude, getting out of the slums and everything. And that's really what Bruce did. I mean, he is like the only entrepreneur that I could even think of growing up. And that just made a huge impact on me, because I could see the light at the end of the tunnel when I saw, like, this is how you operate it. You don't, and Bruce wasn't a drinker. That was a big deal, in that kind of capacity. And then all of the guys, except for people like me, who, a young 13-year-old, they were all drunks. I mean, that just kind of goes par with the course with a lot of old school construction. So really, but the silver lining to the whole Native American thing is, if you apply yourself and you are a Native American, or any minority in this country at this point, like, the sky is the limit. I mean, I understand that everybody's dealt different hands of cards. Some people are dealt a royal flush, and some people are dealt a really crappy set of hands. That's kind of the best analogy I can make in terms of, poker and stuff like that. So if you are in that category of, I was dealt a very crappy hand in life, you're still playing. Like, you're still playing the game. I need you to recognize that, people that are listening. It's like, your challenge is greater. You have to play those cards almost perfectly. So I understand the systemic issues and all of that, but there's the attitude of just that the world is stacked against you and therefore you shouldn't challenge it, is the problem with society. You need to challenge it.
Well, you even see people who are dealt those bad hands, they rise to the challenge and overcome every obstacle that they're faced, and they get to that royal flush that they end up wanting to be at. But it didn't take them an easy route, but they learn over time and they work hard to get to that moment.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I've been telling my children a lot this lately, and we were at like a lunch or a breakfast, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 weeks ago or something like that. And we were just sitting there, just a little moment of silence. And I go, you know what, guys? It took me 40 years to realize this. I'm 40 years old right now. And I said, what do you guys think about what I'm about to say? I said, when anything negative happens in my life, I get really excited. And they just like, they were shocked. And I go, I'm serious. I go, why do you think that is? And they'll go, I don't know, because you're just an optimistic guy. And I go, because it's physics. If something negative happens, then something positive has to happen. Equal and opposite reactions. Electricity doesn't work without it. This is just the laws of, like, the universe we live in. And so what I'm getting at with that is like, those big challenges that you have, or like you get knocked down as an entrepreneur, it's actually a blessing in disguise if you're working dumb. And then the smart part comes of like, oh, I'm never making that mistake again. Like, I'm going to go on this different path the next time I go to attempt that and learn from it. So I'm actually an advocate of, like, it's okay to work dumb every once in a while. Like make those mistakes, but you better learn from those mistakes. That's the critical part.
You talked to how Bruce was a big influence and how you wanted to kind of replicate that kind of what that journey he's been on with the career path. Sometimes we're asked that fun question. As you were getting older, was that still your dream job, or did you kind of find a different path or a different idea that you wanted to pursue?
Actually, all of the above. So like my trajectory then, like every summer, what I did is I thought, oh, okay, so I've learned how to roof on summer one, right? But how do you become a general contractor? Well, you got to like at least touch all of the trades at least once so you know what to look for when you're hiring subcontractors and all of that stuff. So then I made it a goal of like every single summer I would work a different trade. So I moved to foundations and then framing and then, trim work on the inside and all of that kind of stuff all the way up till I was 18. And then a lot of people are still going to college, but it was really pounded into, especially like I'm sort of a millennial, as what I call it, like halfway Gen X, halfway millennial. And our generation was really spoon fed the whole, especially in the environment I grew up in, where in the 1980s in that area in Northwest North Dakota, there was this huge oil boom that happened. And a ton of people got wealthy, but then a ton of people like lost their butts and just kind of drank and spent the money away. And so all of our teachers in high school then would be like, the oil boom's never coming back and you need to go get an education. And so I listened to them. And so for me, it wasn't about higher ed right away after school because I was like kind of a lower B student. I graduated with like the lowest honors you possibly could have had. I just kind of coasted through school. I was more interested in girls and sports and fish hunting and fishing, to be clear, to be honest, which was fun. Those are life skills. But so I went to a tech school for 2 years, the North Dakota State School of Science in Wahpeton, and went to this program that was for building. It was called Building Construction Tech because I was like, well, I got to get some kind of degree. And this all ties into the whole. I went in high school with a class of 20 people. When you are in that small of a school, you really have no choice of like what you have to take. There's not even like electives in that small of a school. So I just didn't excel at school because I was just kind of boxed in and I'm just not that person. It's not so much that I'm a hippy dippy free spirit. It's just I'm very type A. I'm the oldest grandkid. I'm the oldest of my siblings. And so you're naturally this leader and you need to go forge your own path. So when I got to North Dakota State College of Science, all of a sudden I was on the dean's list every semester. I was completely loving school. And then it clicked about the second semester after I figured out how to even monetize it with all the Native American scholarships and getting good grades for the first time and all of that. I was like, oh, I love school. Like, why? Oh, because I got to pick what I wanted to do. I love school so much by the end of that 2 year stint, just getting my applied associates, that I found myself, our capstone project for that little stint was we had to build a house and we did it from the foundation all the way up, which makes sense if you're going to be a general contractor, right? In this tech trade industry. And I was looking at the blueprints and I just found myself thinking like, as a very curious person and a person who really seeks the truth all the time is like, well, why did the architect draw it like this? Like, I'm just like, I don't understand. Like, I really want to know that. And then the entrepreneurial bug started clicking a little bit too. And I was like, man, if I became an architect, right? The architects draw the buildings first. If I became an architect, not only would I, be an architect and I would draw the buildings and apparently they make, a decent amount of money. It was what I thought going into it. And then I thought like, oh, I could flip those clients into building clients eventually, right? And I'm thinking of this as like a 20-year-old guy. And so I applied to the school to the north, 70 miles north in Fargo, North Dakota, NDSU, and got accepted there to the initial 350 students. And then it's very competitive. Then they pare it down to 50 students. I got accepted into the second year where there's 50. And then again, the same sort of trajectory happened where it was like, oh my gosh, I just love school. I mean, I was such an academic. I just buried myself in all of my studies. I was a studio rat. I barely slept. A two-time McNair scholar, and then ended up graduating at the top of my class. So my trajectory went towards architecture, where then I landed in Boulder during the Great Recession, got one of the last internships in Colorado, got laid off 9 months later. My heart was completely broken. I had two kids. But then I fell back on all the handyman work and the construction work, and I started working for cash. I didn't, I'm very unapologetic about that and proud that I didn't take any unemployment. I'm just, kind of this individualist. And so through that, then I started to land a little bit of design work from these clients. I landed a custom house. I landed a clinic. The clinic required a practicing architect who was licensed. And I actually, funnily enough, ironically, brought that work back to the firm that laid me off and sort of formed this relationship with them for a while that we worked together and everything. And then my business partner, Alex Gore, he thought he got laid off in New York City. And I mean, he actually watched like Wall Street melt down from the skyscraper he was working in. And he got laid off. He called me. He was upset, of course. And he's like, well, we didn't know any better, right? He was like, well, what if I just go back to grad school for construction management and weather this storm? Like thinking like, yeah, the Great Recession is going to last one year. We didn't know. We just didn't know. So he did, and then it didn't last. It lasted way longer, especially in the architecture and engineering and construction community. They just got pummeled. 50% of everybody was laid off at that point in our industry specifically. It was worse than like this tech meltdown that we're kind of seeing now. And so I landed. I was doing the handyman work while he was back at home living with his mom and dad after he got his second master's. He's completely dejected. And I said, hey, I got a house. I have all of this other CAD work I kind of landed in a certain way, and I have a clinic. And I go, how much money do you got? Because the apartment above me just opened up. And he goes, I don't know. I got like 3 months worth of rent. I go, come on out. Let's try it. Let's start a business together. You got nothing like what's the worst that can happen? We're already at the bottom with the whole thing. We really were. We had no clients. We had no portfolio to get clients, and that's where our company name comes from. So he came down. We starved for 3 years. He started in 2010. Instead of the garage, we worked, that garage story you hear about like Jeff Bezos and stuff. We worked out of his dining room until 2013. And then we had this amazing stretch of growth once the economy took off for about 7 years. And we ended up doing some really cool projects. Like we built this tiny house. It's called Atlas Tiny House. And we got an HGTV for it. So we got all this like amazing marketing from it. I mean, you have to donate all your time and sort of the money to put up the project when you do these HGTV shows. But we knew it would pay off marketing wise. And sure enough, after we did the first one, we won an International Architecture Award. We were on TV every 2 weeks. And Subaru saw us and they said, hey, you guys are the only ones in the nation that seem to be like making something super unique with these tiny houses that fold up. They're like transforming structures. And I said, yeah, we are. And they go like, well, we want you to build two more. And the first one is so hard to build. I looked at Al and I was like, I'm not doing it again, because I was the one with the most building experience. And he said, well, what if I tell him this number? And I go, if you tell him that number and they go for it, I'm all in. My wife couldn't even tell me no, and they didn't even blink. They're Subaru. So we ended up building those two, and we made enough profit to buy a piece of land. And we bought a piece of land. It was a third of an acre in the city we operated in here in Longmont, northern Colorado. And then that's when the contractor hat finally came back on all those years later. And we wore all three hats for that development: architect, real estate developer, and builder. And now in 2023, I have a construction foreman that works underneath me and two carpenters. And now I finally have my general contracting firm. And it's one of the most, it just makes me so happy to go on job sites. I actually do probably enjoy, if God came down and he put a gun to my head and he said, at this moment, and he said, Lance, you can only do one of the professions you do from here on out, it would be general contracting.
And it just shows that, kind of how we talked about earlier, it can take time to get to where you are. And
Yeah.
it took you that long route, but you kept going. You enjoyed what you're doing. Did the work ever take an effect? You talked about being laid off and that really affected your family. Did working so much take a bigger effect on your family?
Yes. So there was, during the development, there was a stint where I worked 80 days in a row. And I I say 80 days in a row, but there was one day right in the middle of like the 40 and the 40. It was kind of like Exodus, biblical wise. It was blew my mind. I was like 40, I've made it through 40 days in the desert, and then I got sick, and I just physically couldn't like leave the couch that day. But otherwise, if I wouldn't have been for that one day, I would have been working 80 days in a row. But during that time when I was working like that much, trying to get this development finished, because we had to do a lot of stuff on our own with very little capital to be able to build a $3 million project.
Mhm.
And so, God bless my former wife Marilyn, who took care of the kids through that whole time, unequivocally just didn't even ask questions, just did her job that she could in that kind of way. I think my kids understand in hindsight now what it took, because I'm literally recording this with you as we sit in one of the condos that I designed, built, and developed, and then my ex-wife actually lives right next door, so it's kind of like the perfect living situation in that way. Uh, but for me personally, it actually gave me the biggest burnout I've ever had in my life. And I just had no motivation. And I am not that person. I mean, I hope the energy is coming across here in this interview. Like, wow, that guy, does he even sleep? And it's like there was a whole year, and then COVID hit too. So it was like this perfect storm of just like doom and gloom outside. And at the same time, I was just completely burnt out from finishing up the development and working so much. And then the third thing that happened was all my children became teenagers. And I should have listened to my mother, because I should have mentally prepared, and just, she was right about this. And she was like, you enjoy them when they're young, like feverishly, because once they become teenagers, they don't really care about you. Like they don't want anything to do with you. It totally makes sense too, right? And like honestly, that like as a confident parent, I'm like, I was even telling my daughter on the way over to record this with you, I was like, hey, it's okay if when it's my weekend with you, if you want to go hang out with your friends, I want you to have friends. You need friends. You got to be independent. Like you're not hurting dad's feeling. Well, when that third thing happened, and I was sitting there and going, oh yeah, I moved to Colorado to like hike and fish in the mountains. Oh my God, I just completely forgot about, like, that was the primary reason that I moved here, was the outdoors, because the mountains and the wilderness to me are like the biggest piece of therapy as
Mhm.
a person can do. For me, it's just everything. Like if I'm extroverting all week, and then Saturday happens, and I can go on a solo mission like I did last Saturday and go 7.5 miles up, 7.5 miles back, maybe see two people, have the whole lake to myself. That's where like the reset and a big part of my happiness comes from. So that's how I dealt with it. And then the beautiful kind of egg that bloomed, or that was born because of that and laid, is my mother never lets anybody forget this. If like she meets somebody like a new friend of mine or something like that, uh, she'll somehow have to bring up like, well, do you know what Lance wanted to be when he was in second grade? I'll be like, no. And she's like, well, he wrote into his teacher that he wanted to be a professional fisherman. So I started a YouTube channel called Fishing with Lance. I have a Newsbreak channel, Fishing with Lance, some other social media handles like Instagram, and ended up finally monetizing those channels. And then I framed like 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was in 2021, yeah, because I'd been doing it for a year. I framed, the picture of me holding a fish, and then the first cent I made, and gave it to mom for Mother's Day.
What has been the greatest achievement from, besides that moment, with fishing, especially in an area where fishing is popular?
Yeah. Uh, all the friends that I've made just
Okay.
is so good. It's like I have and like some of them are from the internet, because they'll DM me on like Insta, or I was on this other website at one point, Fish Explorer, when I was the regional editor for Indian Peaks Wilderness, James Peak Wilderness, and Rocky Mountain National Park, believe it or not. And the buddies and the friends that I found and surrounded myself with, and then that I now guide up into the mountains, is like it's a cathartic experience, because I'm just like, oh, and there's other people that appreciate this experience with me.
Mhm.
So that's really what it is. And I kind of have matured this last spring and summer because I was like, am I patient enough now? And do I know, all of these lakes and creeks enough to be able to bring people up, and being safe and all that stuff, right? Because we're going in such high altitudes. And that has been the most rewarding part is like putting people on fish for the very first time and then getting them excited about like, yeah, get off your butt and go to the mountains. It's healthy for you.
Is there a location that is a prime spot for you that you want to go to and fish, or like an event that you want to fish at?
Uh, yes. So there's like a few, they're sort of secret lakes. So like for instance, the last weekend when I hiked up 7.5 miles, that's a deep hike. That's a very hard thing to do. I even like tracked I finally tracked how many calories that I thought I was burning because I'd come home and I'd be like, you know, I would be so hungry. I mean, I would eat a lunch and stuff, but I would still be so hungry for the next 2 or 3 days. I'd be like, I got to be burning like 5,000 calories. These have to be like 5,000 calorie hikes and days and stuff. And sure enough, just the hike alone was like 3,200. And then I was like, yeah, that doesn't, yeah, I know. That doesn't, that doesn't even count. It doesn't even count walking around the lake for 3 hours, right? Like climbing up cliffs and stuff. So I was like, it's definitely 5,000 calories. Um, so those super deep hikes that I go all the way up to the Continental Divide in Colorado, for right now, those are the things like once it freezes up too, you really can't access them. I mean, they become only accessible for like 6 to 8 weeks out of the year, and they're really only open water for maybe 3 months because it's so cold up at like 11, 12,000 feet in the air above sea level. So right now, those are the ones that really that I just it's like being a child again in a really good way. I was just telling one of my friends, Vicky, this actually. She's like, "Well, where are you going?" Uh, or she's like, "Is that the deepest hike you'll do of the year?" And I go, "No, there's another one, and that one's kind of like I said when I get to this place, it just reminds me of the 1 acre pond where I grew up fishing, and it just and when I have it all to myself, it's like I feel like I'm 12 again, in like the best way, because it's just like you're witnessing natural magic happen all the time."
Have your kids gotten involved with fishing? Is it something that you guys all do together, or they just have no interest at all?
No, no, they like it. Poor Kaya, she every time we go, some reason she hasn't caught a fish lately. But she will go with dad. She enjoys it thoroughly. For her, the experience is like going up that high and being able to literally touch the clouds. She's only 14, so she still kind of has that kind of wonder about her. I mean, so does Kyler. Kyler's 18. With Kyler, it was really special actually last summer. Kyler he got into some bad crowd. He got into this like skateboarding culture, and he started to get into some drugs and stuff like that. And honestly, I think what we ended up doing with him probably saved his life. Because the fentanyl, I'm not saying he was doing fentanyl, but like almost every hard drug right now is laced with it, and
Mhm.
and then even you hear these stories about it like being on like police cars, like their handles, just craziness, right? And every weekend, he and I did wilderness therapy. So the beautiful thing about like as deep as I go, as soon as you get up about 9,000 feet, and I hike to about 11 or 12,000 for these lakes that are super secluded, like you can't get cell service. So it really is meditative in that kind of way. And it was probably the best way to clean him up because like the best thing about getting so exhausted on those hikes, and I do get tired and stuff like that, but especially if it's a young guy like him, it's just a reminder of like the most you're most thankful for like the most basic things.
Mhm.
Like, oh, we're done with the hike. I can't wait for a giant drink of water. Oh, we got to the lake. We're gonna set up camp. I just want to eat something. Or I just want to lay down. Like so, just like completely getting grounded again in that way is what that was. And so 2 weekends ago, then he was having not drug issues or anything like that. He's cleaned up and everything, and he's going to community college, and he's got jobs, and he's a great artist and all these things. But what just really filled my whole heart and soul up was when he just reached out to me on like a Thursday or something. He goes, I think we need to go on one of those hikes again, out of the blue. And then we did, and we went on a super deep hike, and you could tell it just reset his whole mojo. So just the fact that, like, at least I've planted that seed, hopefully, in them, and whether they go to all the way deep like I do or anything like that, like, that's not the point. The point is that, like, finding nature in even the smallest places, even if they live in an apartment one day or something and they grow a little tomato plant on the balcony and spend time with it, that stuff is just very important.
You talked about earlier about you being a podcast host, as we're both fellow hosts. What was the mission in creating your show?
Twofold. So one was just to give back. Alex and I have always just been like a give without question. If you have something positive to give, then God has given you sort of a gift, literally, of like it's selfish if you don't share that sort of with the rest of the universe and everything. But the reason why it actually started is, and we started ours in 2017. It's called Inside the Firm Podcast, and the name is literally it. It's like you come inside of our firm. So Alex and I were both teaching at CU. We both still do teach at CU, and doing all the teaching and the family and the businesses and everything else. Like, we found ourselves so busy that we didn't have kind of time to just sit down and talk business. Business owner to business owner, partner to partner. And at the same time that sort of happened in 2017, it was like, oh, 2017 minus 2010, that's 7 years. Holy cow, Al! Like, we've kind of made it. Like, you hear the statistic all the time about most startups fail within the first 7 years, and we got to year 7 and we had employees and we were turning a profit and we built the tiny houses and we were on the verge of starting this development. It was like, we got to tell our story. The other thing is, there's so much negativity with the media on our generation of millennial, Gen X, and Zoomers about pushing this idea of perpetual victimhood, right? Where it's like, oh, again, back to the cards. The cards are all stacked against you. The government's the only solution. We need socialism. We need communism. And it was like, no, 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 wait. There's 2 guys in Longmont, Colorado that are still proving the American dream is 100% right. If we can teach people just by virtue of us telling our story of how we started and how we made it, and like the crazy decisions we made about doing weird marketing ideas like doomsdaydwellings.com, getting in Modern in Denver because of that, the tiny houses, and getting on HGTV, which led to the development, and starving for all those years, and going out there and just being a beacon of positivity. That's where the Friday show comes in. And then we have a Monday show that I've been doing for the past 3 years, and that's called Monday Morning Coffee. It's on the same show, but that interviews folks like yourself, Alex, and just other entrepreneurs that, when I screen them, they have to meet some certain criteria for me. A lot of it is like, I want the people who went through hell to get where they're at. Like, I'm here. I really want just people to not be victims. Like, we live in a world of actual abundance, I think, and not scarcity. And there's just light always beats dark. That's the idea behind the podcast.
When you hear people's reactions, what does that mean to you? Or what kind of things are people saying that when they hear your show or they're listening to an episode? Are they interested in a certain aspect that you guys are talking about? Or are they shocked to hear what you guys are saying?
I think they're shocked because we are not close to the vest. And most architects and designers they hold everything very, very close to their vest, because I think the mentality is this mentality of scarcity. And like, if we basically explain how we're doing what we think how architects should be doing business, how we could be doing it better, how we could literally just be better at customer service. Like, we're some of the only ones that are talking about customer service. Like, there's a reason why Alex and I we have 2 locations, and the one location in Longmont has 76 5-star reviews. It's like a perfect 5.0 on Google Business. Very hard to do. Denver office already has 21 5-star reviews. We're the top-rated architecture firm, not because we're doing actual, high end only award-winning work is because we listen to our customers and we use our talents to make their visions happen, no matter the style they want, traditional, modern, contemporary, all that stuff. So the best fan mail that we get from people is they say, thank you for being like unapologetic and just sharing everything. I really appreciate it. And you guys have inspired me to start my own business.
I like how you mentioned about being authentic because I think nowadays with social media, you can't really tell who's authentic or really saying the truth because I think that's where people connect. And especially with the stories I share on my show, I love when people are really telling the true story that they've gone through because I think that's where people start connecting with those individuals and they're able to say, I went through something similar or I can relate where people just want to show the best parts of their lives and not really get real and think that it's kind of not being vulnerable in a way. So I appreciate that you're open and sharing, especially your story that you've gone through where you're able to be open about it because it happened and you
Yeah.
from the going from the ground to the ceiling.
Yeah. Our lawyers hate that. but I'm but like your lawyer, I'm not giving legal advice, but I'll just tell you what my opinion is. And my opinion is like my lawyers are not always right. So I think probably not everybody's lawyers are always right. They're going to be the most cautious people, and that is something we've had to contend with. Is just like my is it I think it's John 8:23 is my favorite Bible verse, which is the truth shall set you free. Like that's how I live my life. It's like I can't I know once you know that, like you can't lie anymore because
Yeah.
it's eventually it's going to boil up. I mean, I'm just so of like, and maybe I'm too blunt sometimes, and but like another one of my quotes I've just been clinging on to for the last couple of years is like, have the courage to be disliked.
Yeah.
How much better would our politicians and like all of those institutional bureaucrats be if they actually had the courage to be disliked instead of just trying to please everybody, if they did the right thing. So yeah, I hope that's the primary reason. I'm just like we're trying to inspire people to start businesses and like, you know, put their get their work boots on, get their work shoes on, like get after it, get up, stop drinking, wake up early, like get in discipline equals freedom. The same sort of thing as I'm trying to do that with like being unapologetic about, the truth because we need it desperately right now in society. Like we are living in a web of lies.
Looking at your journey that you've been on, if you could describe the path that you've been on in a few words, how would you describe that path you've been on?
Pushing a boulder up a mountain every single day and loving it.
I like it. I like it. With everything you've done, our listeners like to know a little bit more about our guests. When you're not working, you kind of talked about you like hiking, fishing. Is there anything you like to do for fun besides what you've already talked about?
I listen to, lately I've been listening to a ton of music. It's funny. I'm a professional podcaster like yourself, but all of a sudden I'm not listening to podcasts anymore. So it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy to me. But it's so coincidental too. Is like my daughter is getting into music at this amazing exponential rate, and now we have this beautiful relationship that is like really getting mended in a really positive way with music. So for me, it's listening to music in my free time, and and then doing some gardening on the side of things. So I have a community garden. It's my nonprofit, longmontcommunitygardens.org. And like last night, I spent 2 hours with this cute girl picking, harvesting all of the potatoes and stuff like that. My daughter, after I picked her up from school today, we went and picked raspberries off the raspberry bushes. So those little things are the little things that I really enjoy. And then camping, actually, camping and relaxing. I used to poo-poo camping so much because I was like, why do I want to go sleep on the ground? That's silly. And then I discovered car camping, and I'm like, oh, I'm bringing the 5-star hotel to the camp and just really enjoying like staring at a fire with like some of my best friends.
What type of music are you into nowadays?
Oh, my top two are hip hop and metal for sure. My favorite band is Brand New. If your millennials are listening, they know who that is. I think their best album is the I think is it No Fear? I don't know, but they're one of their first ones. Uh, and then my favorite rapper of all time is Kanye West. Like his whole discography to me is everything. And then back to that kind of quote, I just think he's right. He's always on the bleeding edge. I might not always agree with the crazy stuff he's saying and everything like that, but I can appreciate his no fear attitude and his he's trying to tell the truth. Even if it's not a truth that people want to hear, like he's trying his best to do that. Those are my top two. In fact, I've been listening to St. Pablo all day today on repeat.
I love the complete different type of music that you're listening to, hip hop and metal. Definitely not going to find someone that likes both, but it just shows that people like so many different things, and that just shows the community. Like you are listening to things that have total opposite fan bases, but you can find the common ground and enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah. I like to try to think of myself as a Renaissance man. By the way, that I just want to make sure that so people aren't screaming at their radio or earbuds. Uh, the 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 album I recommend for Brand New is Your Favorite Weapon, that one. But yeah, I like going back and forth in that kind of way. And I mean, I talk about this with my daughter, and she was like, it's kind of cool. Like we'll listen to techno, and then we'll listen to metal, and then we'll listen to hip hop, and then we'll listen to like Stevie Nicks. And I'm like, yeah, isn't it great? Like good music is good music.
With the final question to ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
You need to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Being an entrepreneur isn't about being fearless or like not being afraid of things. It's just and even if you don't become an entrepreneur, even if you are just, there's like something you want to accomplish in your life. For instance, for me, there was a student I went to college with. His name is Justin Miedema, and he was such a good public speaker, but he wasn't that good of an architecture student. But he was such a good public speaker that it made his architecture look good. And I thought, man, if I think I'm a good architect, what would happen if I was a good speaker and I could sell the projects even more? But I hated public speaking. So I think if you get comfortable doing something uncomfortable, and the more you do it and you're sort of in this area, just know you're not alone. Like we're all like this. The most type A, alpha, extroverted, trust me, there was a big periods of our lives where we were comfortable being uncomfortable until we were just comfortable.
Well, Lance, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we are excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Thanks for having me on, Alex. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I hope your listeners enjoy it.
Tune in next time to hear my next guest talk about their rise to the challenge. Remember to follow, subscribe on all major audio platforms, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for the full length episode in video format. What path do you take to accomplish your goals? You decide.